Hello and welcome back. I'm Joseph Hoffman, and in this lesson we're going to move on to learning page 2 in Prelude in C minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. Let's check out the score to get started. Here's page 2 of the score for Prelude in C minor. Just like last time, I encourage you to pause and hunt for any flats. Here's some B's, so these are all flat. Here's a B in the left hand. Here's some A's, but should I flat these? Normally we would flat A because of the key signature, but because of this natural on this A, all the other A's in that same position are natural. So again, this is optional, but if you like, some people really find it easier to learn if you're prepared where all the flats are going to be from your key signature. Pause if you'd like some time to work on that. And in the meantime, be watching out for these A naturals. There are a lot of A naturals coming along in this section, and a lot of F sharps too. If you're done circling all the flats on this page, then let's try and play it. Let's start with the left hand again today. Here in measure 13, we start on this ground G. And now I'd like you to pause the video and figure out the left hand part on your own from measure 13 all the way into the first note of measure 16. Pause to learn that on your own, then press play and we'll check it out together. So you should have had G rest, D, B flat, G rest, then B flat, G, E flat. Now, it might have looked like, oh, these are the same notes again, but hopefully you're watching carefully and notice that we're a skip lower now for that section. B flat, G, E flat, with fingers 1, 2, 4, rest, then back up to G, E flat, C, and that's where we'll stop with the left hand. Now, if that matched what you played, great job. If you need extra time to practice, you can always pause, of course. Now let's look at the right hand part. Here in measure 13, we get a very interesting pattern that's not quite a triad. Notice we have A natural, B flat, D. And this creates some real tension right here. That A is a non-chord tone. It's actually a kind of suspension, which is going to, in the next measure, resolve down to a G. Notice how that creates some real tension there. That's a real dissonance that Bach has created here that then resolves to consonance in the next measure. Remember, dissonance, two notes that don't sound very happy together. Hear that tension that Bach creates there? That then resolves. That A travels down to the G in the next measure to make it sound a little more peaceful again. Okay, so let's play these as chords, as block chords. Here's measure 13, play that with me, and then resolves to this in measure 14. Now, can you figure out measure 15 as a blocked chord? See, we have a B flat, a D, and a G. Can you tell me the name of that chord? Remember, seeing a fourth and a third should be a clue this is an inversion. If we put the G on the bottom, you can see that's a G minor triad, first inversion. Okay, so let's put this both hands together now and listen to what it sounds like. Here in measure 13. And then we'll stop there. So pause the video and work on measures 13 through the first note of measure 16, hands together, and then press play to go on. So our left hand just played C here in measure 16, and then we're going to switch to a finger 1 on that same note, C, A natural, and then this low D, rest, then D, A natural, D, rest, D, A natural, D, Okay, pause the video and work on just the left hand alone, measure 16 through the first note of measure 19, then press play to go on. Now let's look at the right hand part. Here in measure 16, can you take these notes of measure 16 and turn it into a chord? It's going to be a bit unusual of a chord. We've got an A natural, an E flat, remember E's are all flat from the key signature, and then finger 5 is on G. And with the left hand C, this is a kind of chord we actually haven't learned yet. It's called a half diminished 7 chord. Don't worry about that. We'll learn more about that chord later, but it's a really cool sound if you ask me. And then, okay, so backing up to measure 16, here's our chord. Now, can you figure out the chord for measure 17? Try to play it as a blocked chord, all the notes of the right hand. We have an A natural, a C, and an F sharp. Aha. Do you know what chord this is? If we put the F sharp on the bottom, you'll see it's a diminished triad, F sharp diminished, first inversion. And then measure 18, same thing again. Exact same notes in measure 18. It's a repeat of measure 17. So pause the video, and I'd like you to work on measures 16, 17, and 18, hands together. Maybe review it as block chords a couple times to get used to shifting from here in measure 16 to here in measure 17. I love practicing with blocked chords. If I have a song with a lot of broken chords or piece, I do it as block chords so my fingers get used to those positions, and then when I go back to the to the broken chords, it just fits in my fingers so nicely. It's like my fingers just know where to go because I've already practiced it as blocked chords first. So pause and work on measure 16 through the first note of measure 19, and then press play to go on. Now, starting in measure 19, it starts to get a little trickier with the left hand, because you're going to start to find some bigger jumps that the left hand has to navigate. And so if you don't quite get this next section hands together today, that's totally fine. You might want to do this next section hands alone for longer at first. Maybe take a couple of days hands alone, and then later this week you can try tackling it hands together. So let's just focus on left hand alone for a little bit. I'd like you to challenge yourself and see if you can figure out measures 19, 20, 21 to the first note of 22, left hand alone, on your own. And just, I'm warning you, there's going to be some skips around where your hand has to move back and forth a little bit. You're not going to be able to make all the notes legato. That's part of why I'm choosing a detached touch, because your hand has to move around so much. So being a little detached will help with that. Pause the video, and can you figure out left hand measures 19 through the first note of 22? Then press play to go on. Here's what you should have got. Left hand starts on low D, rest, D, B flat, D, rest, E flat, C, D, rest, G, D, D, rest. Now, if that matched what you played, great job. If you need more time to practice, you can always pause. Now, let's look at the right hand. Can you take measure 19 and turn that into a triad? Make that a blocked chord. We have B, which I hope you remembered from the key signature is B flat. And then we have a D and a G. What triad is that? That's our G minor first inversion triad. Now let's look at measure 20. Can you turn measure 20 into a triad? Right hand block chord triad. We have a C, an F sharp, and A natural. Aha, that is an F sharp diminished triad second inversion. Now let's try measure 21. Can you play measure 21 as a blocked chord? We have a D, a G, and a B flat. What triad is that? Can you name it? If you said G minor, second inversion, great job. So let's go all the way back to measure 19. We have G minor first inversion, F sharp diminished, second inversion, and then G minor second inversion. Notice how that kind of makes a cool chord progression. G minor, F sharp diminished, G minor. Now try that with me. Here's measure 19, play this triad, F sharp diminished, G minor. I strongly encourage you, as you're learning a new piece, don't just think of the notes as random notes. As you're learning it, think about the chords that you're playing, and that will help you memorize it when you notice those patterns. Bach wasn't just randomly doing chords. He knew he wanted G minor, F sharp diminished, G minor. Now hands together, that will be like this. This is optional. I said you don't have to learn this hands together today. If you'd like to pause and work on that hands together, you can. Or you can save that for later in the week. Otherwise, let's go to measure 22 and do just a little more of the left-hand part. So we've got this low D, then we jump way up to this A natural, F sharp, and then don't miss this one. We've been doing so many of these low Ds, it's easy to miss. Measure 23, Bach surprises us with an E flat here, and I love this E flat. That just comes like almost out of nowhere. Here's measure 22, then E flat, then back to D. So many interesting chords in this section. So again, let's look at just the left hand. Measure 22, we have D, rest, A natural, F sharp, E flat. And I don't really like to play that E flat with my finger 5. I usually use a 4 or even a 3 because I find that those feel more secure on a black key where I have to do a big jump to a black key. I usually feel best with 3 or 4. So see what feels good for you. Rest, G, E flat, back to D. Rest, F sharp, D, D. And we'll stop there at measure 25. Pause the video and work on left hand alone, measures 22 through the first note of 25, then press play to go on. Now I'd like to challenge you to learn the right hand part on your own. Measures 22, 23, and 24. Again, use the technique we've been using of playing them as blocked chords first and then broken. Pause and see if you can figure out those 3 measures on your own, and then press play and we'll check it out together. So measure 22, you should have gotten this, D, F sharp, C. And then measure 23, it's this, C sharp, G, B flat. Don't forget, all Bs are flat automatically from our key signature. And then measure 24 is this, C, E flat, A natural. The C would automatically be natural, but that's a courtesy because we had C sharp in the previous measure. So there's measure 24. Hands together, we get this. Oh, and I should stop on the first note of measure 25 so we can practice playing across the bar line. Okay, pause if you'd like some practice hands together, or like I said, we can save that for later in the week. If you're ready, let's go on and try one more line to finish out today. I know this page is a challenging page on this piece, so thanks for your focus and hanging in there. Let's take a look at what the left hand does, starting measures 25 and on. We have this low D, then E natural, C sharp, D. Rest, E flat, C natural, D. And again, keeping these notes detached will help you navigate from these high notes down to that low note. You can't stretch, you know, even my huge hands, I have very large hands, and even that's super uncomfortable for me to try to stretch down there. So just pick your hand up and move it. Okay, don't try and stretch between notes that are that far apart. Look, just move your hand down. So just pick up and move it. Boom, boom, boom. Here's measure 25. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 1E and a 2E and a 3E and... Okay, pause the video and work on left hand alone from measure 25 to the first note of the next page. Then press play to go on. Okay, now let's tackle the right hand part. Once again, I'd like you to try it on your own first. Try measures 25, 26, and 27, just playing them as blocked triads, and then we'll check it out together. Okay, measure 25 is B flat, E natural, G, which is an E diminished second inversion triad. Bach really loves the diminished triad. You see it a lot in his music. He uses it to create tension. Diminished triads have some of the most tension and dissonance of any other chord. And then measure 26, we get an A natural, C, G. Kind of an interesting chord that we haven't learned yet. That's okay. And then in measure 27, it resolves to an F sharp diminished. In fact, I can go ahead and tell you what this chord is. It's actually a suspension of the F sharp diminished triad. See, this G doesn't even belong in this chord. It's trying to get to that F sharp. So Bach creates some tension there. See, that's a dissonance between these. A seventh, this is the interval of a seventh, has some dissonance in it, and then he resolves that in the next measure to the F sharp. Hear how that sounds dissonant and then consonant. Bach creates tension, and then we're all happy again, right? Okay, so hands together from measure 25, we get this. And then we'll stop there for today. Okay, this was a challenging page. The hands are going, well, especially the left hand is moving around a lot here. So I encourage you to do some hands alone practice this week. Continue to use the blocked chords as an efficient practice tool for learning the right hand. And so you get used to going from position to position. And then slowly put it hands together. You can use the metronome set to a very slow speed at first. Maybe even slower. Boom, ba, 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 ba. There is no shame in practicing slowly. Everyone has to practice slowly to get it fast eventually. And if you practice it slowly, you'll be sure to play the right notes, the right fingerings. So then when you do get it fast, you'll be playing it so much better. Slow is fast, I like to say. You've probably heard me say it before. Slow is fast means practicing slow is the fastest way to get fast. Practicing fast is slow because you'll make so many mistakes, you'll play it sloppily, and so you'll actually be getting better slowly. Does that make sense? So remember, slow is fast. You'll be playing fast, faster by practicing slow. Trust me. My last tip is to remember that because page 2 is more challenging than page 1, I strongly encourage you to start your practice not on page 1 this week, but on page 2. Practice the hard parts first. Skip page 1 for now and work on page 2 maybe 5 times, maybe 10 times, then go back and try the whole thing from the start. By zooming in on the little section you're working on, maybe you'll just work on 3 measures or even 2 measures at a time till you feel really confident with it, and then zoom out till you can play the whole thing confidently up to the end of page 2. Stop on the first note of page 3, which we'll tackle in our next lesson. Great work learning page 2 of Prelude in C minor by Johann Sebastian Bach. Thanks for watching and learning with me, and happy practicing. Hey, did you hear about the 2 antennas that got married? No. Well, they say it wasn't much of a wedding ceremony, but the reception was great. I'll bet the couple was really on the same wavelength. Yeah, they were tuned into each other for sure.